Greetings, Guardians. My name is Bife here. When the hero of the city formerly known as Razor Lazir took the bones of a defeated Hive Knight and grafted them to his weapon, he had unknowingly sown the first seeds of his legacy. Today, he is remembered not as Razor Lazir, but as Dredgen Yor, and his weapon as the first of the accursed weapons of sorrow. It would be known as Thorn. As the first of the Dredgens, he would be the first of those to embrace the terrible power of weapons empowered with both Hive sorcery and humanity's mastery of war. He was one of the first that could adequately be called a Dark Guardian. Today, Yor's legacy finds its continuity in the form of the leader of the Barrent Imperium, mouthpiece of 6 of the 9, and alternate weapon of the Outer Orbits. He is known as Dredgen Bale, and he is the subject of our investigation today. Bale's story thus far is one where you can somewhat empathize with him to an extent, but nonetheless it is a cautionary tale. For all the views that one might see as valid and for all the criticisms that he can level at the last city in the Vanguard, he is still aiming to right those wrongs, perceived or not, with methods that would politely be called barbaric. More accurately, he would doom the entire system without even realizing it, if he was allowed to succeed in his plans. Such is the extent to which he has been manipulated by his celestial master. He not only operates on a series of falsehoods, but lives those falsehoods with a degree of belief that makes him dangerous and fanatical. If he had been allowed to succeed in his plan, he would have snuffed out the Traveler and the Guardians of the Lost City with it. So today, we're going to dive into his lore, explaining what makes him tick, talking about his past, and where his future is taking him. Please also note that there will be spoilers throughout. So, first things first. There's a ton of lore within the Sintering lore book that we'll be getting into, but I think the very first thing you should all understand is who Dredgen Bale really is. Dredgens may go through the dark process of the unmaking when choosing their new titles for themselves, but they all still had names before they evolved. In the case of Dredgen Bale, we learned in the course of Renegades that he was the son of a VIP within the Lost City, in particular the son of the owner of Tex Mechanica, a Guardian weapons foundry, the son of Caesar Bazet. It's a little out of place, but one of the first pieces of lore I want to explore is from Bale's past, because it tells us his original first name. He is the son of Caesar, and his path would lead him to lord over an empire. But he wasn't always known as Bale. There was a time in his life where he was known as Nazaire. Nazaire slips on rain-slick grass, and his pursuer leaps on him. His right arm goes numb as fishbone thorns open a gash from wrist to shoulder. The Hive Acolyte grabs him by the throat. He wasn't supposed to be here, but the tower forbids the knowledge he seeks, and the city dares not defy them. So he went into the wild looking for answers, and now he is going to die. Even as his vision darkens, survival instinct drives him to fight. He fumbles for his sidearm with his good hand and fires wildly. Bone chips and blood spray across his hands, his face, until the Acolyte's laughter gurgles and dies. He lies on his back, gasping, blinking salty rain from his eyes. Hysteria bubbles in his chest. He wants to go home. A sudden scintillation. A ghost appears over the dead Acolyte. It is more monstrous than any other, even the one that took his mother from him, because it bears Hive livery. He seizes it out of the air. "You," he wheezes, his voice a ruin. "You were supposed to protect us." It has no rebuttal, because it is a ghost. And like every ghost, it is not a protector. It is a liar and a thief, a wretched viper, and it wants to take everything from him. just like its kin. He digs his thumbs into its eye. It thrashes and screams. He squeezes harder and harder until something gives way. A nauseating squelch followed by a thrill of sick satisfaction. It is the first ghost he kills. Drenched in icy rain, smeared with gore and mud, he clips the ghost's shell to his belt and vows, "It will not be the last." So for context and clarity, it's only implied here, but it was confirmed in an interview that I did with Alison Lurs recently that Bale and Nazaire are indeed the same person. So I'm going to be referring to them interchangeably throughout this, but I'll try and make it clear when Bale begins and Nazaire ends. This leads us to one of his most important character traits, which is that he is a regular human being, and not a guardian. He is not even a light bearer. He has no ghost. He has no powers of the light. He has no ability to resurrect. And if you look throughout the campaign of Renegades, despite his bravery in the face of characters like Arnor Mahal, there were plenty of hints to this idea, even before he lost his hand to a Devourer round from Drifter's Thorn, and left the Drifter saying, "Where's your ghost, kid? Where's your ghost?" I mean, take a look at these moments again. And remember that Bale is just a man.
You follow in the footsteps of Guardian killers. Why do you hate your own kind so much?
No more questions.
I hope Six hasn't killed your ghost already. Because Six used you. And he doesn't plan on leaving until you're dead.
You're wrong. This is temporary. We made a deal. Six will honor it. He has to. The time of Guardians as shepherds of humanity is over. You are supposed to protect the people, not rule them.
Notice how he never calls himself a Guardian, often refers to them as separate from himself, never says we in the context of himself and Lightbearers, and makes no commentary about a ghost that he doesn't have, and makes sure to cut off Arnor's question into why he hates his own kind so much, because after all, he is not of Guardian kind. Bale's place as a normal human being, aside from his acquired stasis powers, is the most important thing to understand about his capabilities. He is capable of paracausal power thanks to stasis, but he has one life, and he throws it into combat with reckless abandon. But even his place as a normal human being is not the thing that truly drives him. What does drive him is the same thing that led him to kill that ghost in the lore tab. It is the reason for him to despise the light and everyone chosen by it. In that lore tab of the Shrewd Survivor Gauntlets, there's a mention of Nazaire's mother, and it's an important one to understand because it is what has filled him with more hatred than anything else. Bale might hate the apparatus of the city and the immortal reign of Guardians, but all that hate stems from something deeply personal. To be clear, in his childhood, Nazaire loved his mother, as any son would love their mother. It's what happened to her that changed him so utterly, and it is a tragedy that only the light is capable of creating. The nature of that moment which changed Nazaire fundamentally is revealed in the second entry of Sintering. If you want to understand Bale's story at its heart, this is the key to doing so. For context, at this point in Nazaire's life, he's been working within Tex Mechanica under his father, and is technically just a civilian of the Last City. In the grand scheme of things, especially when compared to who he will become, he is powerless. But he is never going to feel more powerless than he did in this moment. I've known Mother to be dead for longer than I knew her alive. I remember small moments. Falling asleep on her shoulder as she carried me home at night after a holiday party, teaching me to swim, singing as she washed dishes. I remember feeling safe with her. Even when Father shouted, her voice would silence him, protecting me. Memories that comforted me. Until I saw her. The market at Bonnet Plaza in the West District. I was getting lunch outside the Mechanica home office. Keitel's, logisticians, father's lickspittles, hiccups at Factory 3 and 4. A miserable day. I had interred her. She was ash. But in this moment, I saw my mother moving through the crowd with her ghost flitting around her head. She had been dead for 3 years at this point. Somehow, the light had found her. It seems all it needed was ash. 2 other chosen by the light marched at her side, bristling with weapons leashed to their puppet ears. The chosen on some holy business to save humanity. She glowed, flush with heat, as if the fire that cremated her now animated her from within. I cried out in horror, unable to stop myself. It made sense. Of course the Traveler would grant my beloved mother the gift every child in the Lost City dreams of, every dying elder longs for, as they move away from the main of life. Eternal life without fear. But when I embraced her, crying her name at the center of a cheering crowd, what did my mother do? She shoved me away. I felt the searing push of solar energy in her strength, a sizzling reminder on my chest as I stumbled back and fell. Not a twinkle of recognition in her eyes, just discomfort. The look one gives a clamoring beggar that gets too close. Cold. She was cold. She was hideous. A doppelganger, homunculus. A chirping idiot of a ghost commanded me to clear the way, and off they went. Bystanders helped me to my feet. Strangers, kinder than my own mother. Is this the truth of the light? Is this what it does? Animate the dead and possess them with ghosts, puppeteers who keep them hooked to life like a fish on a lure? To prey on desperation and transfix the city in this poisoned dream? What miracle makes a mother spit on her child? My memories of her are now curses. Leaden dead weight. Every single one, a searing ember. If there's anything that makes Nazaire's hatred of the Guardians, ghosts, and the light understandable, it is undoubtedly this moment. There is no comparison that we can see in the real world. The closest, perhaps, is for a grave to be exhumed and robbed. But in no way could someone be prepared for a loved one to return like that, and to spurn the person that they once called their son. This is just another reminder of what Mara understood when she perceived Orin, of what Lodi understood when he saw Ikora, of what Amanda understood when she saw Crow. Guardians are, at their very heart, unnatural. We often forget it, but technically we are the risen undead. We don't shamble around like the typical zombies of other fictional media, but by the strictest definition, we are zombies for certain. Nazaire's mother being robbed of her memories is a facet of the light's behavior within Guardians. The light helps those who are reborn to forget their past selves. It has caused disasters before, and it would be fair to say that everything that pushed Nazaire Buzet to become Dredge and Bale stems from this one moment. But before we go further, we should understand a little more about Nazaire's past. After all, it's important to understand the life that he led if we're going to perceive how he ended up becoming this monster. The first thing that should be learned is that within the Lost City, Nazaire lived a life within privileged surroundings. As the son of a foundry owner, he had more wealth and opportunity at his disposal than almost anyone else in the Lost City. Nazaire would have probably received the best education possible, and we know that he was boosted into a career position within Tex Mechanica. It's not explicitly said, but come on, his father is the foundry owner and he works there. This is a Nepo baby. Nepotism is also perhaps something fitting with Tex Mechanica's style. They are very well known for underhanded dealings. It may not be the gravest of their sins, but regardless, it helps us to understand Nazaire's privilege and the picture of which he is a part. Unfortunately for Nazaire, it wasn't all sunshine and roses. He most certainly loved his mother and had a good relationship with her, but his father was a source of constant anxiety. In the times after the death of Nazer's mother, he became distant and reserved, keeping mostly to his tinkering shed with the schematics of weapons that he was working on. But in the times before this, he was supposedly a menace. All this would begin to push Nazer into a darker place with influences that would pull him towards darkness of a very literal kind. He would begin to see the powers of the world as authorities to be displaced by default, regardless of their vice or virtue. To an extent, one cannot blame him. This, after all, was probably one of the darkest times in his life thus far. I think he wishes for me to rot in the family estate and be quiet again. I was a quiet child, and he, a colossus. I would shroud myself and slip through the cold halls of our home, fleeing the muffled sound of his rage, a phantom by choice, to protect myself. When mother grew ill and died, father fell silent, listless. This was his first retreat. Father ignored me so profoundly that I truly believed myself to be invisible. It made me think that I had died with mother. That was even more terrifying than his rage. I was losing my father as well. But now, I am older and braver. Father may or may not have clipped my wings. I don't care. I will take care of myself. I am used to being alone. But I also have been exploring other ways of being, even those prohibited by the Vanguard. There are fascinating texts in this world, volumes and folios that speak of clarity and purpose, and the methods to attain it. I have tried many: meditation, religion, self-actualization, but they all failed. Save for one, an old text of assured providence, an exegesis on the sermons of Twin Bird of the Binary Star. Agony and pain exist, Twin Bird once said, but not all pain is meaningless. Some pain hones. It hammers bladed agony into shape, and an edge is made. Utility formed as a survival mechanism, making the afflicted sharper. So I began to run. Thousands of steps, each a moment of pain, each a nail, pinning me to the present. The pain worked. The pain guided me. The pain led me to power. The Vanguard and Twin Bird both called it darkness. I call it a new path. The light comes for you in death, and only if it chooses. But darkness is always there, within, waiting for you to grasp it and pull it to the surface. And so, I had a revelation. I needed to attempt communion. I planned routes to run that took me deeper into the city, down among the people, in their parks, in their streets, full of sound and life and beings, others who did not fear life but made it, composed its raw cacophony, all a part of a pattern so vast I could not perceive it. But I was, too, one of its parts. The Petri dish is a pandemonic universe to the single cell, but utterly still to the human eye. I think the light is selfish. To see the state of the last city below the Vanguard's Olympian refuge is to understand this. The light sends out its little ghosts and elevates only the dead whom it deems worthy, never touching the desperate living. It pulls them up to the graceful decks of the tower, damning the rest to live without its gift. The story is common among the citizens of the last city. I should know. It happened to me, too. My mother died and was returned and abandoned me. My father consigned me to the annals of his memory and moved on as if I, too, were already dead. But in the city, the people welcomed me. The dock workers, the vagrants, the shopkeepers, everyone hurrying on every errand, all denied the light's gift, but were subject to its rule. I disappeared among them, but I was not consciously forgotten by them. I was not spurned by them. At any moment, on one of my excursions, I could stop and talk to someone, to have a moment of connection, to see them as well. I moved among them as one of them, an equal in dreams and aspiration, seen and heard. The Traveler has the power to shape reality, and yet there are beggars in the low districts of the Lost City. There are children that go hungry. The streets are policed. From where do violence and crimes of desperation spring? The individual rendered miserable before their birth, or the great systems above them that maintain the status quo? My own wealth, though it can be stripped from me, is not a shield, it is not a weapon, it is a fiat. Exchange only as long as I play within the bounds of the light's rules. There is a pattern to who the light picks. I think it chooses based on how jagged the hierarchy of pain will become when it intervenes. I think the light wants to hurt me, but the darkness wants me to do something with that pain. If there was ever a written guide on how Dredgen Bale truly sees the world, then this last passage would be it. He sees guardians and ghosts as evil because of the supposed hierarchy of pain imposed by the light and its random selection of guardians. Although, in truth, Nazaire didn't believe it was random. He believed it was deliberate, made so that it could inflict as much pain as possible. He had a terrible relationship with his father that sounded as though it was essentially abusive, even if only verbally. The gnarly thing about the term rage is that it can define any number of sins. And then, of course, in all the uncaring coldness of the world around him, Bale found his answer, his escape, in scriptures of a most heretical nature. Scriptures of Twin Bird of the Binary Star. This is a reference to the Binary Star cult that's mentioned as far back in Destiny as the original Darkness Grimoire card from Destiny 1 Vanilla. Their core belief is that the Traveler either triggered the collapse itself or knew that the darkness was coming for it and hoped to use Sol as a proxy army. This position was labeled as heretical long ago, but now, knowing more, it seems hard to deny that there were at least a few kernels of truth to it. The Traveler made its final stand in Sol, but it had most certainly been running for long before then. It left countless civilizations in its wake to fend for themselves against the influence of the Witness and the Black Fleet, and it might well have done the same to humanity if given the chance. We still don't explicitly know why the Traveler stood here, in Sol, and chose to fight and die. But regardless, this does not change the fact that the Binary Star cult certainly does have some truth to its beliefs. It should also be noted that very little is known about the Binary Star cult, and that in the search for Twin Bird, there doesn't seem to be any relevant returns at a first glance. I'll investigate more into it as time goes on, but for the moment, Twin Bird certainly doesn't raise any eyebrows for me. The Binary Star cult are also confusingly mentioned alongside a similar group called the Trinary Star cult, who also despise the light of the Traveler. It's entirely possible that this is an old piece of lore that was misinterpreted, and that the Trinary and Binary Star cults were meant to be the same thing in the end. But I don't know, we'll need to find out. Regardless of their origins and whether the Binary and Trinary Star cults are meant to be the same, Bale picking up the Binary Star's texts is most certainly what influenced him to this position that he now finds himself in. And then there's probably the most interesting revelation of all, the fact that from here he managed to nurture a small kernel of darkness-based power from within himself. He attuned to it, prepared his body and mind for it. Certainly it is not a true degree of power at this moment in time. We know that simply because of what happened later in his life, when he truly acquired powers of darkness. Before we get to that, though, I should make a note of Premier Loom and his place within Nazaire's story. At the time being, he was simply known as Brachus Loom. He had been a friend and confidant of Nazaire since the arrival of Keitel's ascendancy within the Lost City. They commonly discussed their ideas and would share their dreams with one another. Loom believed that Keitel was leading her people to ruin, and that she had stopped trying to retake Torobatl. Loom believed that for Torobatl's sake, her cause needed to be abandoned. At a certain point in time, these views only intensified, no doubt thanks to his more forceful retirement after he sustained major injuries battling the Hive on one deployment. Loom and Nazaire would eventually break away from the Lost City and its people, and would make attempts to realize their dreams. For his part, Loom was hell-bent on the creation of a new Borant force that would retake Torobatl from the Hive. Certainly not a unique ambition, but one that he followed with particular zeal. Nazaire, on the other hand, was hell-bent on the liberation of the people of the city from the Vanguard, the Guardians, and the tyranny of the Light. This is really the first point at which we see the establishment of the Borant Imperium's earliest iteration. It lacked sufficient soldiers to be anything more than a ragtag group of traitors, but that was enough for what came next. Because this is where the true power of the Imperium would begin to blossom. Nazaire's quest would eventually lead him to Europa, and to the Praxic Vault. It was here that his entire life would truly be changed. He walked into what he believed was a quiet, solemn, lonely temple. Unwittingly, he walked straight into the gaping maw of a celestial hunter. He was a vessel to its hands, and had shown that he was a pliable clay to the whims of any great manipulator. And there is no greater manipulator than Six. All Nazaire needed was a push, and he would welcome the fall into the abyss. My teachers, my brother Loom, my long-dead master Twin Bird, both speak of the same thing, which I have now found for myself. Years ago, I exercised my body through rituals of agony. As I write, it appears this new power will do likewise for me. My vision will be made clear, and with that clarity I will actualize. I will become greater than the gifted. I had found a place of power on Europa, a trove of artifacts tainted with darkness, rumors of real power hidden deep within a forgotten Praxic temple. I took a maniple of Loom's most fearsome volunteers into that place, losing many to the elements before we even reached its entrance. It was sweltering inside, the air so thick with damp dust that we were burning our filters at thrice the baseline. Loom's warriors chanted liturgical cadences to fill the halls with celebration from the deep organs. But that dead place swallowed all sounds they made. They thought it was a trick of acoustics or some other paracausal phenomenon, and so they armed themselves accordingly. But the closer we approached the heart of the temple, the more I grew assured of the futility of conventional weapons. I began to hear a voice, a whisper. Not one of us, or Loom, who was watching from his convalescing bed aboard our ship. A new voice, just for me. In the heart of the temple was a great sepulchre that contained a fantastic glittering crystal. From my studies, I knew it to be a crystal of stasis, a paracausal manifestation of darkness, that power to which I had spent years attuning my body and mind. I touched it and invited power in. A voice. His voice. Loom still swears it was a devil of unknown power who spoke to me, but I know the truth. Unseen, a voice leaped between his soldiers, possessing them to speak one word at a time. A message born from howling pain that found its final home in me. The agony was unrelenting, the pain immense, but I had prepared for this moment for years. I did not ignite. My soul did not burn out. The devil's voice became my voice, and the devil became me, and I understood. This was not a devil. This was not the light. It was not even the darkness. This was a third power, a new thing, my own path. To Saturn, the voice and I cried. To the rings, my weapon. 6. This was the name of the Great One, the third power. Six held my hand and showed me Loom wounded and Loom mighty, myself wounded and myself mighty. Six, this was the power's name. Tombs and temples. We entered a tomb and made it a temple with our cries, as the Barant once stamped migration prayers into Torabartle's dirt, as I once ran through the halls of my family manor, fearing and yearning. In the quiet after, I was alone. Loom bellowed in my orals, screaming at me in fury for the death of his brethren. He swore to kill me when I returned, but I knew he would not. So I told him, and I began to laugh, and made him another promise. I would heal his wound, erase the hive magic that rotted him from the inside out. I am happy. I was chosen. I had been right. I was the vessel. My actions, perhaps from even before my birth, but certainly from the moment I became conscious, were guided by the hands that now rested on my shoulders. My explorations of darkness, my readings and agonies, were indeed the method by which I would attain a power that could be shared among the masses, a counterweight to the light. But it would have to begin with me. It could only begin with me. I am, was, and will be the conduit through which all futures flow. This is the first moment at which Nazaire acquired the true powers of darkness through stasis, and the first moment when he connected with 6 of the 9. To straighten out our timeline a bit, in a few notes from the next few entries we can tell that not long after this moment, Nazaire acquired his Praxic blade. Maybe he even stole it from the temple itself. After all, he states that he stole it, quote, from the heart of the enemy, which could imply that he stole it from the city, but it could also imply that it was stolen from its place here in this Praxic temple. At this point, I think Bale would have killed the one Hive Guardian and its ghost from the Shrewd Survivor gauntlets. Then, according to the same notes in Sintering entry number 6, he went on to kill more Guardians along with their ghosts. He started wearing the ghostly remains as grim trophies around his waist, tying them to a chain. This same entry is also the first moment at which the word Dredgen is mentioned within Nazaire's logs, but it doesn't seem to be the moment when he fully claimed the title of Dredgen Bale. One has to remember as well that much like the process of getting the title of Dredgen in-game from Gambit, becoming a Dredgen in the lore is a long and painful process that requires you to evolve into something terrible and otherworldly, something that hungers, something bitter, something evil. No, that's not me calling out you Gambit mains, I swear. From this point, Six and Nazaire's perspectives would begin to intertwine further and further, and Bale would begin to emerge. He would start to understand the visions from the future gained from the fourth-dimensional nature of Six. He saw that in time the Barant Imperium would fall, even as they were built up, even as Loom would survive, even as Loom's part to play in the future was somehow still necessary. Bale would also start searching for candidates within the Barant Imperium for a project which he referred to as his Agony Catchment. If the name is to be followed through, then this was perhaps meant to be a means of him sharing the weight and pain of the agony that he felt, trying to channel Six as its vessel. The problem was that the scions Nazaire picked for the project kept on burning out. None lasted longer than 45 seconds. At a certain point in time, he even threatened to shut down the Totality Division and to have Rao herself used as the primary catchment if she couldn't find better scions. As this project continued to fail, Bale would begin to reach out to Six more and more. This would of course only increase the pain he felt, as more and more of him was overtaken and transformed. It's at this moment that the teachings of the Binary Star Cult, Six's transformations of Bale's flesh, and maybe even the ritual of unmaking would all meet in a gruesome overlap. For after all, the ritual of unmaking states that evolution is impossible without pain. Thanks to the teachings of Twinbird, Nazaire believed that pain was a pathway to becoming something greater. to sharpening one's edge and honing the blade by which one could cut the world apart. With these overlapping understandings, and with the constant pain of channeling Six, Nazaire had set himself on a path that would lead him to put down his old name and to take up the title of Dredgen Bale. The exact moment of his unmaking is not shown in the lore thus far, but one can be certain that it was a moment of pain. He was also led to seek out those in the system that felt similarly to him, who believed that pain could be a path followed to a greater source of power. There were many who would follow in his footsteps and his teachings, those who would aspire to become Dredgens themselves. Many of them were nameless apprentices, and many more would die in the process. But amongst those nameless, a few would rise to claim the title alongside him. Dredgen Seer and Dredgen Harrow were amongst the most prominent, with Seer in particular working towards the schemes that would assist Six, trying to build it an ascendant throne world so that it could escape. But in the relationship that the Dredgens had to Six, Bale would be the most impacted of all. At a certain point in time, one of the Scions, understanding what Seer was becoming, questioned how Bale was still even alive. Even after his first communion with Six, Bale spoke about how parts of his body were being altered. He knew that he was no longer simply a carbon body. His body began to bloom with cadmium, lead, metallic hydrogen, tungsten, platinum. Slowly, Bale was beginning to fall apart. Nowhere is this more apparent than when one looks beneath his mask, where eventually he would change from a man to something unrecognizable. Bale stares at the reflection in his helmet, and a stranger stares back. He can't even recognize himself anymore. Between the sunken cheeks and missing eye, his nose is turning darker, stinging blisters spreading by the hour, a damage reminiscent of frostbite. The helmet shakes in his quivering hand. Bale remembers sourdough in the oven, a savory aroma wafting from the cast iron, lavender soap gracing his nostrils under an embrace, being enveloped in a warm blanket, a clean cotton scent lulling him into a peaceful night's sleep. The memories make him dizzy now. Bale tries to steady himself by locking onto his helmet. He pales, noticing the familiar eye looking back at him, tears threatening to spill over. He's alone now. He clicks his tongue, annoyed at his vulnerability. A nose is useless. Bale was dependent in his youth, but not anymore. He grits his teeth. The stinging pain in his nose finally subsides into numbness. It's time. The Dredgen is tired of death keeping him from his true potential. He will banish these memories for good. Bale reaches for his face, holding the bridge of his dead nose between thumb and index finger. Crack! In a quick movement, Bale snaps it from his face. The nose drops to the floor with a quiet thud. Suddenly, his palms begin to sweat, his eyes water, and nausea scalds his throat. Scared yet pleased, Bale smiles. Bale and Six's continued mutilation of Bale's body would be something picked up on by Lodi in their first interactions, and Bale would reveal that he could even tell that his liver had been replaced with metal. According to Premier Loom, such changes and the interactions with Six generally would make Bale difficult to kill. As Six, Bale and Loom were working together in tandem. The Barant Imperium would be founded properly. The benediction of Six included creating a pocket dimension where time stood still. Within this space, the Barant under Loom's command would create endless legions of soldiers and would work on Nightfall Station's construction. Bale might have been interacting primarily with Six, but he was also chosen as a more pliant tool of the outer orbits generally. Presumably in this time, Six would also gift Bail with the Nightfall Station's core and the Eclipse powers within. Such powers were used to keep Premier Loom alive. After all, Eclipse energy does power his Cuirass. However, the real blossoming thing in this moment would be the dreams of Premier Loom and of Dredgen Bail, thanks to the beginning of Nightfall Station's capacity being understood. When Nightfall Station was completed, of course, Bail would enact his plan. He would use it to destroy the Guardians and the Traveler, breaking the Light's hold on the lost city. For his part, Premier Loom, on the other hand, planned to use it for an entirely different purpose: the reconquest of Torobatl. But then came the intervention of the Drifter, Arnor, Ido, and Eris. They stole away with the schematics for Nightfall Station and learned of Bail's plan. And from there, the events of Renegades played out. The attack on Tharsis was Bail's chance to proclaim his intent. The Drifter joined him to enact the Long Con. At the end of this Long Con, Bail would lose his hand to the Drifter's Thorn, and was nearly killed by our Guardian. Bail would also survive his encounter in space with the Drifter, and would limp away. Nearly killed, but not gone. He would continue to lead the now weakened Barant Imperium as best he could. But his story now leaves us with a series of loose threads to follow. We know that he has sent his agents to many corners of the system, and that he is seeking power. Whilst the exact objects and desires of his search are not yet truly known, it seems clear that he is searching for some form of power. Lore recovered regarding Dredgen Seer implies that Dredgen Bail's agents were searching on the moon for something powerful. There are many things that this could be, but at the moment it is unclear. Bail has also been looking into old mythology that was supposedly kept out of the Vanguard's archives in order to find power from other places. Whilst the Sage of Dione and Talin's Grove are unknowns to us, the King of Old Chicago seems to be a mystery he is closest to uncovering. And then, of course, Bail has dispatched Barant Imperium agents to search for a site of staggering importance to us personally: the site of our grave.
False weapon. I see your throat slit. I see you buried. Because I do so. So why is your grave empty? The legions await your command, Lord Dredgen. Ask them to find the grave. What? I hear you. Tell them I'm on my way.
All this raises the important question, which is simply whether Dredgen Bail is actually going to be the end of us, if he is actually going to kill us in the future. It's a little easier for us to prevent this fate if Six and the other 9 are bound and have no hold over cosmic destiny, but the possibility of it being a potential future we'll face is one that should worry us all. It proves that Bail might still be a threat. After all, he's killed ghosts before. He could easily do it again given the chance. I think we should talk about what some of these sources of power might end up leading to. Bail has made a proclamation that informs us of his moves in the future, and the plan he has enacted with Six.
I am the hand which pens the book of the alchemist. I tithe to Six of the 9, and he rewards me with strength.
Bail is tithing power to Six of the 9. We already know that Six is likely to be using the power for its own ends, so that it can escape into an ascendant orbit within the ascendant plane, thus escaping its own demise. However, we have no clue if this is something that Bail is intending to do purely through sword logic by means of killing, or whether he intends to tithe to Six in some other manner. We do, however, have a series of logs displaying the first time when Bail tithed to Six, as well as several other occurrences of note. We complement one another. Our natures are missable. I, searing curiosity. You, a starving pit. One endlessly examines the other, of course. Our connection goes beyond our ingenuity. Your use of me as a vessel? I feel close, like understanding tethers of myself to yours. Through common task and violent pact. And I am glad of it. Thank you for trusting me. Side effects aside, I am as my nature decrees. I wonder what name I shall take when I am a god. If that happens prior to conclusion of the arrangement, of course. Or if I'll remain a god afterwards. Either way, I will enjoy our partnership, however temporary it may be. 6? Our agreement will reach its fruition when my goal is met. We are aligned, sir. Please, not now. My side. I can't stand up. Take strength. Sir? What did you do to my skin? It's tungsten. Stand and stay your frailty. I need you. Yes. Yes, of course. No one can aid my freedom but you, chosen weapon. I will, sir. Thank you, always, for fixing what is broken. I recited my part precisely. Did the tithe take? Did the ritual work? Uncertain. Is it possible to look into the future and tell? I do not need to. I feel stronger. Tentative, detectable success. Yes. Minute, but measurable strength. Incredible. The pain is worth the price. No one has done what we have done before. Curious. What is this feeling? It is hunger, sir. I want it. If Baal continues to tithe to 6, then it may be able to achieve its own ascendant orbit. But the cost to the people of the system, the cost to us, the cost to the foundations of Sol itself and to the other 9 may well be staggering. And of course, we can't possibly conclude Baal's story without one last wild card to consider. Baal has invoked the continuity of the Dredgens, but I don't think he fully appreciates who he truly invoked.
I can tell you're new blood, untrained. Does Dredgenvale know you mock his name?
Not mockery. Continuity. I carry the mantle now.
If Dredgen Baal knew who he had just called out to, he would understand that he was inviting the wrath of a far deadlier killer than even Arnor Mahal. You see, for those who are unaware, Dredgen Vale, not Dredgen Baal, but Dredgen Vale, was one of the 2 founders of the Shadows of Yore, a second-generation group of Dredgens. But he is known better by another name, Shin Malphur, the wielder of the last word, the man with the golden gun, and the killer of the first Dredgen. His arrogance is likely to draw the eyes of the man with the golden gun. If Shin does come out of retirement, then Baal is in for the rudest possible awakening. Who knows where his story leads? For now, Baal is still out there within the system. His acolytes and apprentices are still searching and plotting. His Imperium, though battered and bruised, is still standing. His story is not yet over. It has only just begun. That's all from me for today though. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's more lore to cover on Dredge and Bale, you can expect me to touch on it in the future. But as a long introduction, I wanted to make sure you all had a more complete video to chow down on so that you could understand the story of what is likely to be one of the central villains of the Fate Saga, or at very least one of its central characters. If you enjoyed the video, a like is greatly appreciated, especially in a longer video like this. I don't know if a hype button is around on the dashboard for people to use, but if it is, go ahead and hit that too. And if you have your own thoughts, leave them down below in the comments section. And if you want more lore from universes near and far, hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always has been quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Byf. For Audacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.